the UK. Then we are here in the first place because we have overborrowed. As of December 2021, our total debt was sitting at about 386 billion, up from a relatively low 120 billion in 2017. So about 260 billion has been borrowed in a short space of 4 years, or 5 years, let's now call it. And the main reason why we are stressed now and need more money is because of this astronomical increase in debt payment. To contextualize it, Sana, when our debt was 120 billion, we were paying about 10 billion interest payment a year. Now it has ballooned to 380 billion. We are paying about 38.7 billion interest every year. Can you see that it is the whack up of extra debt that has caused this? Now this is the trick, Sana. Having debt in itself is not a problem. But having the generative capacity, the revenue generative capacity to service that debt, it's okay. And that is why you have countries like Japan that have close to 200% debt to GDP ratio. You have the US has over 130% debt to GDP ratio, right? So effectively for the US, their debt, for every dollar of revenue they collect, they have $1.30 to service. But it is not a problem for the US economy because they are continuously able to generate income. It is not a problem for the US economy because they are investing in the economy to unlock more growth. And this is the trick there, because as long as you are investing in the economy, you have seen the $1.7 trillion stimulus package that Joe Biden passed. Building bridges, building roads, the kind of things legendary John Mahama was doing in Ghana. Because each of those, building schools, building hospitals, building roads, in the course of the building itself, people work. You have workers working there. And when those workers are working and earning, government is taking its taxes from it. And that taxes will help to a certain extent to cover up the debt that you have procured for that project. So the problem is not the debt. The problem is the generative capacity. In our case, we have taken so much debt and we did not invest this debt in productive capital ventures that would have unlocked employment. In addition, even the viable productive ventures that have been set up, like all the hospitals set up which have been locked up, if those hospitals were open today, they will employ more nurses. If they employ more nurses, each of those nurses will pay tax. So that's more revenue for government. And each of those nurses will buy cement, they will buy rice, they will buy food, which is more market for the rice seller, more market for the maize seller, and the economy grows because there is more consumption in the economy. And that is how I would have mobilized more revenue to service the debt that were incurred to even build those edifices in the first place. Here is the case. We didn't invest all of this, very little, if any, of this 280 billion extra borrowing was invested in any capital expenditure that would generate its own revenue. Now we are in a situation where the revenue base remained relatively stable and flat, while the debt went up and therefore the interest commitments went up. What we should be doing then is to find innovative ways of increasing your revenue collection. So tax enforcement to collect more taxes, that is good, right? Making business easy, ease of business, allowing people, removing nuisance taxes so that business can grow. Because as business grows, you can tax the business. Look, take VAT as a simple example. If our VAT is at 20%, and the total value of transactions in the economy is 100 billion, it means government will get 20 billion, right? So if we promote more transactions, if we allow agri to flourish, allow the construction industry to flourish by paying the contractors, and the value of the economy, transaction in the economy move from 100 billion to 200 billion, then straight away, even with the same 20% VAT, our tax take from VAT alone will shoot up from 20 billion to 40 billion. So now, this is what I call common sense. If you allow the Momo industry, that is estimated at over 500 billion Ghana cedis, to grow, then what it means is that if it grows to 1,000 billion, the taxes to 1 billion, the taxes that we are collecting from it will also grow with it. And this is the surest and safest way to get out of these rules. But for government, the easiest way was to cut on expenditure. Leave the productive capacity there. Cut on expenditure, and whatever savings you may try to balance the books. Even if you can't balance the book, reduce the deficit. Once you reduce the deficit, it means your borrowing will come down, which means your interest rates will come down, which means without even getting more revenue, you'll be a bit better off. Conversely, the reason we are in this mess is because instead of reducing expenditure after a year of COVID, they increase the expenditure. So in a year where there's no COVID, you have more expenditure than in a year where there was COVID. You increase expenditure to a total of almost 135 billion. And of that, only 16 billion is for capital expenditure. So the other 120 billion is for Kinki and Chinam. Now, this is, and you are telling me that once you have a deficit, at the moment, if you look at the deficit projected for 2022 alone, on the face of the transactions they have, they say we'll collect revenue of 100 billion, which is not going to happen. And I'll explain why if you give me a minute. Versus the expenditure of 135 billion. So straight away, we have a deficit of 135 billion. So now, let me ask a simple question. If you have a deficit of 35 billion, how can 6 billion save you? What is 6 billion struck as a percentage of 35 billion? That is barely 25% of it. How can 6 billion ever save us from this 35 billion deficit that they are putting on us? A serious government would have removed everything and sacrificed us right back to, in this year when we are struggling and the international debt market has frozen us out, we need to prove fiscal discipline to them. And to prove fiscal discipline, we should have cut the expenditure. The nonsense expenditure that doesn't need to be there should be cut. And there are many of them, Senna. I'm looking in the budget and I'm seeing Nanado is now getting 3.2 billion for his office. For what? He doesn't construct roads. He doesn't build hospitals. His budget is even bigger than the health budget. Why? If you cut that 3.2 billion, let's even decide that he needs only 1 billion. Give him 1 billion. Remove the other 2.2. That means that 6.9 billion we said we want, it will now drop down. 2 billion is taken out of it down to about 4 billion. So now in this same budget, we are giving tax exemptions of almost 4 billion. A man who hasn't got money is giving freebies. And the tax exemptions are going to international corporations that come to Ghana, make their money and repatriate 99% of their profits. Couldn't we have said to them, look, when times were good, we gave you this tax exemption. But now we are all tight. Citizens are tightening their belts through this COVID levy and all those levies. So we are also going to scrap it for you, at least for the next 2 years till we get out of the debt rules. If you take that 4 billion, add to 2.2 billion from Nanado, you have 6.2 billion. The other amount is insignificant. So expenditure cuts alone could have gotten us out of the woods, and we don't need this 6.9 billion. And so when they say to us without the 6 billion, the government will collapse, I ask them, Senna, how is it you are telling me that you need to collect 100 billion? If we have 100 billion, we would survive. If you get 94 billion, you will die. Does that make sense? It's like telling me that 94% in any exam is a fail. In which university, with what excellence, will 94%, or which primary school, or even kindergarten, will 94% be a fail? It doesn't make sense, Senna. Simply deduct that 6 billion from the 100 billion you are projecting. You have 94 billion, manage 94. After all this year, Senna, let me ask a question. We projected to collect 72 billion. We only collected 67 billion. We missed it by 5 billion. Did Ghana collapse? So if Ghana did not collapse in 2021 with 67 billion revenue, why will Ghana collapse when we get 94 billion? I.e., take the 100 billion they expect and remove the 6.9 billion from it. So when you do this, you realize that these guys, they are so clueless, they are trying to get the country into a panic mode so that we pass it. It is not true today, it is not true tomorrow, that if we don't put the E-levy, the country will collapse. The country is not collapsing anytime soon. And let me put it on record, China, actually, we being frozen out of the international debt market is good for us. I'll tell you why. When you have an alcoholic in your family, you go around the village at Peteshi sellers, and you beg them, even if you have to pay them not to sell a pet to him again, not to give him a pet on credit anymore, because it will save his liver of any more stress. So the fact that the international market refused to lend to us in October when we went there, humiliatingly, first time in our history, it is good for Ghana because it has put the brakes on our borrowing. So these guys have now come back home and they are crowding out the local market by taking out every local lending option that they have. But at least it's okay. From a few other areas, even if it is the local lending, the money is still in Ghana. It is better than this borrowing, they go and borrow outside and the money doesn't even come to Ghana. So that view, that no E-levy, country will collapse, it has no basis, it is ill-informed, and it is pure falsehood meant to push Ghanaians into panic mode to accept this obnoxious levy.